Thank you, Jim, and thanks to all of you for joining. We just optimistically moved our physical return date here at PayPal to sometime in Q1 of next year, so we're still in virtual mode. Hopefully this is the last time we're virtual. It's great to see all of you, and I'm honored to convene today's meeting as your new chair. I want to begin by thanking former chair Mary Huss for her leadership. As I said at the last executive committee meeting, often as a leader, you sign up for something and then you have to deal with the crisis at your doorstep. And Mary's just done an amazing job navigating the council through truly an extraordinary period. I feel really inspired by that. And I know I have big shoes to fill, so thank you, Mary. We've got a full and great agenda today. We're going to talk about housing and homelessness with the head of the region's top housing planning organization. And we also want to hear your thinking on the council's work to establish a new statewide coalition to address California's serious business climate issues. I don't know if Larry is here, but Larry, I think you are here. I just want to recognize Larry Bear and thank him and the Giants for hosting today's reception at Triples Alley at the ballgame. Please note that those attending the game later will be watching the Giants try to clinch a playoff berth in what I think we can all agree has been a remarkable season. So that is truly exciting regional news. Just for some quick business, I'd like to see if we can approve the minutes from the 2020 annual meeting. Could I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Cal Water will make a motion.
Thanks, Marty.
Rob James, second.
Thank you, Rob. All in favor of approving? Any nays or abstentions? Great, the minutes are approved. And we also want to formally elect our new board members. So can I have a motion and a second to elect new board members?
Cal Water will make a motion.
Thanks, Marty. Any second?
Generative second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Any nays or abstentions? Excellent. Welcome to the board, new members. And we would like to formally welcome you with a video presentation. Could we get the video, please? was wonderful. I think we're also going to create Facebook for all of the boards, so we can have a view of all of the board members, our backgrounds, and perhaps even what we do for fun. So you'll hear from the council soon on that. Now I'd like to invite Jim Wunderman to give the annual report and policy update, and we'll take 20 minutes for that. Jim?
Hey, thank you very, very much, Kausik. And that was very impressive that, you know, just the group and the companies that we put up on the screen, you could build a very powerful organization just out of the new people. We didn't show you the photos and all the companies of the 325 members. So gives you a sense of things. I want to thank you, Kausik, for your years of service with McKinsey and now with PayPal. You've been a stalwart member of the president of the Economic Institute Board and now the chair of the BAC board. So I know you're well prepared for the role because I've worked with you for a long time. I'm excited about working together. Mary Huss, as you said, was just incredible, and we're not letting her go. You don't get let go. You won't. She's not. And, you know, that's part of the uniqueness of the Bay Area Council is once you're part of that family, you stay part. I really want to thank, you know, everyone on this call and folks who couldn't make this call. And we are recording it. You know, so a lot of people said it didn't fit their time slot, but they want to see the meeting and get the report. The members, you members have been just amazing. And, you know, it's been a difficult couple of years, obviously, for everybody. And I can't tell you how moved me and the team, I and the team are of what we've worked with, how you've worked with us, supported us, participated in the last couple of years has just been beyond the pale. So I want to thank you for your service and your commitment to this region through the Bay Area Council. And finally, on that team, we've got a splendid group of people who hit this thing hard every single day. You know, I obviously work with them very, very closely. I haven't seen any of them in person pretty much in a year and a half, but I see them on the screen in these squares, and, you know, one of these days things will change. But, you know, no one has been less determined because of the way we're going about this. If anything, I think people have really, you know, really put themselves to the task. So thank you for that. This is our annual meeting of members. And so what we thought, you know, to do is try to give you kind of a high level strategic kind of conversation around what's going on in the Bay Area, as well as take you through some of the details. We provide a lot of material that some of you have probably read, and it's a lot. So, but it's there. So for those of you who'd like to reference it, you know, you're welcome to do it. I could never do it justice in just a few minutes, but yeah, I want to take you through this report, give you some high level stuff, talk a little bit about some of the initiatives, and then, you know, ask you at the end for something. So with that, it'll take about 15 minutes, should take about 15 minutes to get through that. This is our mission. We've tested this mission. While it may be a more challenging one in these times, it remains, you know, I think what we're really all about. So let me just start by saying, if anyone hasn't noticed, you know, we are in a new era at this point. Things have changed dramatically. They are changing before us. We don't know exactly what's on the other side. So we're dealing with terrific uncertainties. And I think a lot of us, you know, we look back to times we thought were challenging and almost wish we were back in those times because we knew a lot more then than we knew now about what we're dealing with. But this is the situation that we find ourselves. And it's exhilarating in some ways to think about what's possible in the future, but it's also quite vexing. So, you know, to this, I'll, you know, go forward in the slides, and we'll go kind of quick here. These are all things that, you know, we're facing tremendous challenges with our climate that impacting us every single day. No one, we talked about a pandemic, but we didn't know we'd actually face one. Now we're seeing what it's like, and this one is a sticky one. It's going to be with us. The world of work is completely different from what it was before. It's changed so dramatically, and is going to continue to present itself as an amazing opportunity, but definitely a challenge, I think, for a lot of us. I think it's fair to say that, the preferences of our consumers in our society is probably different than the expectations of the people who set policy. And that's going to continue to be a big challenge. It's sort of the place where we find ourselves on a lot of issues. This is a big one for any region, and it's a big one for the Bay Area. As the chair of the ferry system, we're now back up to 30% pre-pandemic ridership, and that's the best in the Bay Area. We lead the pack in people getting back on our service. It goes down from there. That is very concerning. And we have traffic levels that are back pre-pandemic on the roads. People don't want to get on transit so far. The way this is Union Square from the top, if those of you can't recognize it, the way people are getting their goods and acquiring both information and physical goods is completely changed from the way it was before. Has major implications. Don't have to tell you about this. This is really confronting us on a whole variety of ways. As you know, it makes it much, much harder to enact rational policy. And unfortunately, our region has become this poster child for people doing so well and people doing so, facing such tremendous difficulty, all in one place, all at the same time. It's really, really tough. And what we're seeing out of this, we're seeing a lot of things, but one of the things we should see if you're not is that lower and middle income folks are leaving the state. That's the group. It's not that wealthy people aren't, because they are, but this is the group that's causing our population to flatten for the first time in its history, or even certainly drop when we look at domestic migration. And so look, there's no question we live in one of the great places on earth. We are so fortunate to be in this Bay Area and to be part of this. But if we're going to succeed going forward and achieve that mission that we put up before, we're going to have to face some facts and realities and get down to some serious business here. And that's what I think this meeting and that's what this group has been about and is going to have to be about in the future. And I think more than before, because of this new era, it's going to depend a lot on our group and our partner groups, to really set the stage. I think in general, we know a lot of the things that need to be done. Executing is a challenge, and we're going to have to do a better job of it going forward. As well as we've done on some things, there's a lot of room to grow, and it's on all of us to do it. And we have to be very, very bold, and at the same time very, very pragmatic. And there's certainly conflict between those ideas, but we've got to thread the needle on it and do it like we've never done before in order to be successful. Fortunately, we've got a 75+ year history now, really 76, in which we've been able to accomplish very, very big things. Start with a vision, actually be able to develop a strategy, and then execute on that strategy. And we're going to have to do that more and better as we go forward. But we do have a past that tells us we can do this. And I'm very, very confident that working together, we can accomplish big, big things in the Bay Area. Let me turn a little bit here now to some of the things that we are doing, sort of the higher level discussion from what was presented in your materials. But just so you know, we're out there every day fighting on the big fronts. So we have a committee dedicated to the climate crisis. We've called it the Water and Resilience Committee, but it takes a number of affects. We're heavily involved in the fires situation and figuring out how to reduce and eliminate those fires over time, the drought and the other effects of resilience, sea level rise, and so forth. And we've got one heck of a water crisis, and we need more water. And if we think we're going to solve the water problem by redistributing the water that we have, which is going to be less in the future because of the reduced snowpack and the greater heat, we're kidding ourselves. It's going to take recycling the water we have, desalinating water we have access to. Those are hard and expensive things to do. We're going to have to do those things, and we're going to lead on doing those things. Our transit systems have to be improved, in terms of employer coordination and public, we reach out to the public tremendous amount to find out what's on their minds. We survey employers on a regular basis. It's our job to bring the employers together to focus on the transportation system of the future and have a system that's a comprehensive combined system that operates from one platform rather than 27 or 28, which is the way we do it today. And we need to think bigger about the actual region that we're in, just like in 1945, when the Bay Area was just a few cities, in San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley, and we envisioned a Bay Area. We now have to envision in Northern California because it's that horse has left the barn. We're out there fighting every day, project by project, to get projects permitted. We're way, way behind. We have hundreds of thousands of units we need to catch up on here in the Bay Area. We need major reforms. We've got 2 bills on the governor's desk, maybe 3 that are significant bills that we need to get moving, but it's going to take more than that. It's going to take a huge legislative and public commitment to change the way we do housing. We've made a lot of progress on accessory dwelling units, but one bill that we had this year to create an improvement stalled. So we made a 2-year bill. So we have to keep working on that. But we've seen tremendous improvements in permitting on ADUs since we got the original legislation passed. This crisis, and Mayor Arreguin will come on in a little while to talk about this and the housing issue. It's probably the most upfront issue that we have, not just in the Bay Area, but in our state. And we've done a lot of work on this. I invite you to participate on that work. I credit the governor for putting up a lot of money, historic amount of money to deal with this, but it's going to probably take more than money. It's going to take a lot of public will, to get us out of this situation, this incredible situation we're in. One of the things that we've been doing a lot of is remembering at every stage of the work we're doing that we're doing it for everybody. We're part of the new era. It's an era for everybody to participate. Everyone has to have the same chance, regardless of their gender or their color or their background. And we're working on that all the time now. And so many of you are participant in that work, and we invite you to that, as well as thinking about how we can make sure that all our young people, early stage people in their career and even later stage, have access to the jobs that are out and have the training that they need to do those jobs. We've had a very active health committee for a number of years, but the mission of that committee has obviously changed, and it may have been a little controversial. I don't think it should be too controversial that we called for a vaccine requirement a couple of weeks ago. We got a lot of attention on simply asking employers to say to folks, hey, look, you need to make sure that the people who work for you, when they come to work, they're vaccinated and you're operating safely, because this is a highly transmissible version of COVID-19 that we're facing. And we're not going to wish this away. We're going to have the only proven method for keeping the transmission down and keeping people from getting seriously affected is through vaccinations. And we can see we've made a lot of progress on it, but we have a lot of work to do in the Bay Area and of course outside the Bay Area. We continue to work hard and see the Bay Area as the center of global commerce. It's what makes us strong, and nothing has changed on that front. Not the tariffs that were imposed, not COVID-19 that's restricted travel. We have to strategize about how we keep ourselves in the center of global trade and commerce. So we continue that work through our committee work and reports and so forth. On the reports, this was a great year for the Economic Institute. These were just a few of the reports that we produced, but there's over a dozen that came out just this year. And if you go to bayareaeconomy.org, you can download all the reports. It's part of the work. And we have a number of really exciting reports in progress. So we want these to be relevant and meaningful reports that help us understand the problem better. And it never, these are all photos of folks we've had one-on-one meetings with just recently. So part of the work to be effective and have clout and influence is you have to talk to the influencers and the decision makers. And fortunately, they see the Bay Area Council as a group they're willing to spend an hour with. And a lot of information can be imparted and a lot of expectations created. And that's the way it's been going. We now have a representative from our team, Frank Holland, actually in Washington, D.C., which is ever more important given some of the issues on the table back in Washington. So we're very excited about the continuing work. Obviously, tomorrow's the recall election. It seems like the outcome we understand, probably not very, very surprising. I thought that's the way it always would go, but for a while it looked a little dicey. But nevertheless, there's going to now be a post-recall period, and one of the things that I'm going to talk about this in detail, so I won't do it now because it's on the agenda for later. But we are very, very concerned about the business climate of the state. Part of it is everything leading up to the pandemic, and then what's happened after the pandemic and the implications for the future. So I'll talk about this in more detail in a little while, and I won't go into it now. So, what I will say is that, again, reiterate, we can't apply the same old expectations and values and approaches that were present a couple of years ago when we had these meetings. Sometimes things just change. As Kausik said about Mary's term, sometimes you deal with the unexpected. And that a good organization is nimble and is ready to take the helm. And I think that's what defines us historically and in the present. And as we roll into the future, what's that future going to be like? I think we all know, we are facing some, not just one or two, but a confluence of challenges that's going to take our determination to overcome. But again, if we can work together on this and rededicate ourselves to these things, then I think that we can be successful, and we will be, because underneath us sit incredible assets, just a treasure of wonderfully talented people, unparalleled institutions, and wonderful opportunities. And there's just no place like the Bay Area. And it's our job to make sure that it in this new era that we're entering, it's able to prove itself as we've proven ourselves before. So my ask of you is for one of rededication. There's a lot of opportunities to participate with the Bay Area Council in our committees and in our task forces, and in leadership and in events, and just a number of, we offer a myriad of possibilities for great people and companies like you and yours to be with us. And we've created quite a family around this, and I think this meeting is evidence of that. And I just want to call to our attention that they're not, the rest of the country, the rest of the state, the rest of the world, they're not waiting for us. It's our job to stand up. And I really, I've been in this job for a long time now. A lot of the people on the team have been there for a while, and we've got great people. We really need you, our members, to take part with us in this. And you've been doing it, and we ask you to keep doing it. So we'll get more specific about that, but we won't do it here. Again, thank you very much, Chair Rajgopal, for taking the helm. And I think I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jim. You finished 3 minutes early.
It's a record. If anyone wants to ask a question, I guess they could raise their hand or something. We can answer. If not, you'll have a shot in the later section.
Yeah, we probably have time for one question. Any burning questions for Jim?
See, if Cliff Waldeck doesn't have a question, then you know that there are no questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jim, for that concise and very clear articulation of both our opportunities and our challenges. Perhaps moved by the optimism we feel on rolling back climate change, the Bay Area Council is buying a boat, as you all know. We think the impacts to San Francisco Bay will be minimal. So here to share a little bit of an update on that for a few minutes is Chief Operating Officer John Grubb to report on the progress of the climate.
Great. Thanks, Kausik. Let me make sure you can see this. Okay, I thank you, Kausik, and thank you, Jim. I've pointed out many times, every 2 weeks, Jim signs my paycheck, and I really am thankful for that. And thank you for all of you for providing the funds for that to be able to be possible. I have 5 minutes to make the most important financial ask the Bay Area Council will ever make of you. Okay, this is a once in a 75-year ask that I'm going to ask. The great thing about this request is that it's a 501c3, so it's going to the Bay Area Council Foundation, and you can do it over 5 years. So we are doing a capital campaign. We've always been a renter in the past for our 75 years. Before the pandemic, the rent was really expensive, and then we were renewing our lease, and it was actually going to double beyond that. We were looking at having to leave San Francisco, lay off staff, and really reduce our impact rather than grow it. So we found an innovative solution, as Kausik mentioned. Hopefully you can see this in front of you. That there is the Klamath. It's a big boat. It was a ferry boat that operated in the San Francisco Bay, built in 1924, carried 1,000 passengers, 75 cars, just to give you a sense of it.
John, I don't think we can see it. I don't think we can see the boat. We see the, shape.
Yeah, I think we're stuck on the cover page.
Oh, weird. Let me see what happened here.
There is a boat, everyone. I've seen it.
Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll just go like this. All right. Thanks, Jim. If that happens again, please tell me again. So, all right. The reason this is important is going to change the financial game for us. So we're no longer going to be a renter. We're going to actually own, and actually, because of subleasable space on here and events, be able to generate net revenue, which will increase the policy impact that we can have on one condition. What is that condition? We have a $7.8 million loan, which we got from the Bank of San Francisco. Thank you, Bank of San Francisco, a wonderful bank that gave us money in a tough time. But it's got a high interest rate and it's a high payment schedule. So if we can fundraise for that and get past that, it's going to be a totally different financial game for us. There's also, this boat itself has a large conference center on it that can hold 200 to 300 people. It's got conference rooms and boardrooms on it. And so a lot of the activities where we may need to go to other places to drive policy in the Bay Area can now happen in our headquarters. You can put your name or your company's name in front of the big people that we host. So the governor of California, other governors, US senators, members of Congress, big CEOs, international delegations. All in all, we're estimating about 27,000 people a year are going to be coming through the Klamath, and this is a great opportunity, hopefully for you, again, once a 75-year ask that we're asking right here. So the space itself, big, 25,000 square feet of interior space. The Bay Area Council's office is going to be on the top floor, plus a little bit of the other space. We will have subleasable space, and then the stunning roof deck that's about 10,000 square feet can host about 300 people. I'll show you that in a second. These are the layouts really quickly. So this is the ground floor, if you will, the bottom floor. There's a conference, the event center that's there, and then there's subleasable space. Again, if you're looking for a space, we got a great deal for you. Then there's the next level, which is our offices, and then a beautiful sun deck out front. And then there's the roof deck here, which will have a really incredible boardroom on the top level, and there's a museum there. It's going to be at Pier 9. We got a 25-year lease from the Port of San Francisco. Thank you, Port of San Francisco. We actually had to change the law to allow us to be able to do this, but we got that done. It's a 5-minute walk from the San Francisco Ferry Building and about a 6-minute walk from the Embarcadero BART station. So it's almost the same as our old office was, but the views are great. So look at these views that we're going to have of the Bay Bridge, downtown San Francisco. This is your walk onto the Klamath, and then walking into what hopefully tomorrow will be renamed the Hanson Bridget Grand Lobby. They're making their decision to potentially sponsor that. If you know anybody named Christina Lawson and you want to send her a note to say yes, please go ahead. So this is the lobby. This is just to give you the look and feel. And you walk upstairs. This is the Bay Area Council's reception space. It's really professional looking space. This is the museum that we'll have on board, which is about the bay and the ferry boat itself. Then here's that roof deck I mentioned. So imagine being on this roof deck, during Fleet Week with the Blue Angels shooting by, or New Year's Eve to see the fireworks, or 4th of July, or your own company's retreat or sponsor, different events that you could do. Again, 300 people can get on this roof deck. It'll be very beautiful. And then this is the conference center that we have. We're building it right now. We're going to pull into Pier 9 about November 30. We'll probably actually formally open our doors in January of 2022. And then, all right, here's the really pay attention slide. So these are the gift levels that we have here. The top level has already been taken, so don't worry. You don't have to get for that one. As you look at these levels, we've tried to have something that could work for most. I know not everyone can do this, but a lot can. Remember, it's split into 5 years, and it's a charitable contribution. So take any of these numbers and then cut it in 5, and that's what we're looking for. So we're going to be reaching out to you individually. Please consider taking our call. I'll promise we'll make it fun. And you can put your name in front of 27,000 powerful folks per year. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you very much for your attention. Kausik, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, John. That was quite inspiring to see. Particularly once we got the pictures working, I think that looks fantastic.
Good.
And we'll all look for the note from you on opportunities. Well, I'm excited now to turn to hear from a special guest. As Jim mentioned at the beginning, housing and homelessness are among the council's top regional policy priorities. As we've heard from various state leaders, including the governor, it's a statewide priority. And as we know from experience, finding solutions to these problems is not easy. Through a combination of legislation, advocacy, and collaboration with other groups, the council has made some good progress in recent years, but there's no question that we have much work to do. And it's critical that we continue to search for solutions. To update us on regional housing planning efforts, I'll ask Jim Wunderman to now introduce a special guest speaker, and then we'll have a chance to ask some questions for the next 25 minutes.
Yeah, so I'll be very, very quick, but I think many of you know Mayor Jesse Arreguin is the mayor of the incredible city of Berkeley and has taken over the role of being the chairman of the Association of Bay Area Governments, called ABAG, which is the lead agency in the Bay Area for determining how we handle housing as a regional policy. And so I've known Mayor Arreguin for several years, and I've watched him closely. And rather than me do the job for him, I think I'm going to let him do it for himself. But listen carefully what this man has to say, because it's very, very important for our future. And I'm just very, very delighted to call him our partner and our friend. So Mayor Jesse Arreguin, I'll let you take it away from here.
Well, thank you, Jim, for that kind introduction. It's really an honor to present to the membership of the Bay Area Council, which is the flagship organization representing our region's businesses. And each of you represents some of our region's major employers. And as a local government official, I've appreciated your commitment to corporate citizenship and your advocacy to advance policies to improve the region's economic climate and our quality of life. And you understand that what's good for business is also good for everyone who lives here as well. The challenges that we face, whether it is our housing shortage, homelessness, our climate crisis, requires all of us, government, business, and philanthropy, and the residents of the region to work together to find solutions and to make positive change. And the Bay Area Council and its members have led regional efforts to address these problems through research, policy development, and advocacy. And I just want to acknowledge the important role that you played in the launch and the development of CASA, the Committee to House the Bay Area, and your work with All Home California and its Regional Impact Council, and the recent work of your Economic Institute in studying the regional crisis of homelessness. All these initiatives have helped move forward the conversation on housing and homelessness, and also recognize that these complex interconnected issues require a regional approach. And far too long, we have looked at issues in the confines of our borders. We know that homelessness goes beyond the borders of one city or one county. And we've also approached these challenges in silos, failing to bring together the stakeholders to find multidisciplinary solutions. You know, homelessness is fundamentally a symptom of our larger housing crisis. And while there are specific interventions that are needed for shelter and bridge housing and health and supportive services, you know, we can't solve our housing problem. We can't solve our homeless problem if we don't solve our housing problem. So, you know, key to finding solutions is bringing all parties to the table: business, the real estate community, service providers, nonprofits, and government partners. And, you know, I believe very strongly in regionalism and partnership as a solution to the challenges that we face in a 21st century Bay Area. And it's long past time to look beyond our own parochial interests and borders, and for us to work together for the greater good. You know, now as we face the threat of the Delta variant, housing insecurity for thousands of households, and the long-term economic recovery for our region, as president of the Association of Bay Area Governments, the region's council of governments representing 101 cities and towns and 9 Bay Area counties, I'm committed to working with the Bay Area Council and its members to find opportunities for public-private partnerships and to advance our region's economic growth and recovery. But we also know that the pandemic has brought to light deep, disparate outcomes and has furthered housing instability and homelessness. And while our region continues to grow, we also have a shortage of at least 3 million homes statewide. So it's in that context that I'm happy to talk briefly around our housing and homeless challenges in our region and some potential solutions to address them. You know, there's no question that these two problems are at the top of the mind of every Bay Area resident and business, but they're also incredibly vexing. And to me, these two issues are inextricably linked. The solution to homelessness is housing. There is a significant shortage of homes, particularly permanent supportive housing in our region, and the funding needed to build and to provide this supportive services for thousands of people experiencing homelessness. And the shortage of housing also increases displacement pressure in our region, and it's pushed generations of Bay Area residents out of the region. Now, for me, this issue is personal. I'm a Bay Area native and lifelong renter. You know, growing up in a working class family in San Francisco, my parents were never able to afford to buy their own home. And I've also experienced displacement, having been evicted from our home. So I know how destabilizing an eviction can be, the fear and uncertainty that it creates. But I'm also a millennial, and I may never be able to afford to buy a home in my own city that I represent, where the median home price is at least 1.5 million. And for others in my generation, this is a sad reality. The lack of production of housing, particularly ownership housing, has priced out generations from ownership and building intergenerational wealth. So having experienced the direct effects of our broader housing shortage, I've committed my public service career to fighting to protect existing residents and to build more housing. And it's a fight that we must lead and a fight that we must win if we are going to be a region that is truly equitable, inclusive, and vibrant. And I fundamentally believe that we must significantly expand housing for people of all income levels, from moderate income housing, above moderate income housing, permanent supportive housing for homeless. We need to further streamline entitlement approvals, promote innovation in housing construction, rezone parcels, redevelop underutilized property along our transit corridors, including parking lots. You know, this is key to solving our climate crisis as well. By promoting dense infill housing close to jobs, we can reduce vehicle miles traveled and promote a more sustainable pattern of living. It's also key to addressing racial justice. Last year, many of us know, we saw a national movement to address systemic racism and end police abuse after the murder of George Floyd. And it's in this conversation that we have realized the ugly reality that systemic racism exists at every level of our society. And that in order to create a truly just and equitable country, we have to dismantle patterns of systemic racism, including in our housing and land use policies. So in my city of Berkeley, we've been leading these conversations. Berkeley has a proud history of progressive leadership, and there are many times that Berkeley has been the first leading national efforts. However, there's one historical fact that I'm not proud of. In 1916, Berkeley became the first city in the country to adopt single-family zoning as a way to prevent a dance hall in the exclusive Elmwood district. The foundation of our single-family zoning is now commonplace throughout the United States and has prevented generations of African Americans and other people of color from living in some of the most exclusive parts of Berkeley and other cities. This is further exacerbated by redlining and discriminatory real estate practices. This pushed African Americans and Japanese Americans and other working class households to certain areas of Berkeley, oftentimes in overcrowded housing, areas with fewer parks and resources, near industry and freeways. And there's no doubt that these discriminatory practices have also led to disparate health and economic outcomes for African Americans and other communities of color in Berkeley. We recognize in Berkeley Berkeley that this is fundamentally wrong, and we're committed to correcting the problems in the past. And earlier this year, we made headlines when we passed a resolution saying that we would end exclusionary zoning by next year and allow multifamily housing in every part of our city. And we think this is important not only to redress past wrongs, but to also expand housing opportunities. And this is in response to also the recently approved regional housing needs allocations that my agency, the Association of Bay Area Governments, has approved. And I just want to recognize the Bay Area Council's critical role, not just in passing Senate Bill 828, but also the work of Matt Arreguin on our Housing Methodology Committee and helping us arrive at a plan that's actually going to promote more housing and more equitable development throughout the region. Cities like Berkeley have to plan for significantly more housing. And in my community, we need to plan for a 200% increase in housing. But unlike some of my neighboring cities, we're not appealing our numbers. Rather, we've launched our effort to update our housing element and rezone our city. And we see this housing element process as an opportunity to meet our housing goals and to address decades of exclusion. You know, our region's significant shortage of building new homes has been worsened by this crisis. Even before the pandemic, the McKinsey study predicted a shortage of at least 2 million homes in California. And in the Bay Area, the pandemic and its negative economic impacts has created even greater housing instability for thousands of households, many on the verge of homelessness. We know the expiration of the state's upcoming eviction moratorium at the end of this month may put further strain on households, and we will see a rise in unsheltered homelessness. So to that end, I just want to say I strongly support the Bay Area Council's housing goals and homelessness goals to expand our housing supply by at least 29,000 units per year, promoting the construction of ADUs, policies to streamline production, and supporting new projects while setting a goal to end homelessness by the end of the decade. You know, if we believe that housing is a human right, then we must remove barriers to building housing. And I see the RHNA process, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation process, as an opportunity to address our region's housing shortage. Now, every city in the region must plan for more housing, and we need to meet our responsibility to address the crisis of the day. And now with SB 35, there are now teeth to the RHNA process. If you do not build the housing and meet certain benchmarks, ministerial approval will kick in. This is along with requirements to affirmatively further fair housing that will ensure that the Bay Area and regions throughout California have to more equitably distribute affordable housing and housing in every part of our region. And so we've used this process to be able to not only look beyond our priority development areas, but look at high resource areas, some communities that have actively resisted building housing, and to require that they have to step up and that they have to meet the regional, statewide responsibility to build more housing. Sorry, give me 1 second. So, we think that this is really critical, not only to address our region's housing need, but to address generations of racial exclusion. So I'm proud to lead ABAG at this time to help lead this important work, along with the work with Plan Bay Area 2050, our regional growth plan that is also looking at promoting more sustainable development throughout our region. We're also working to launch the Bay Area Housing Financing Authority to provide resources and tools for us to address our affordability crisis, and focusing on the 3 Ps: production, preservation, and protection. So, in closing, cities can't do this alone. We need to work with counties. We need to work with the state and federal partners, the private sector, to develop and implement solutions. And the Bay Area Council's goals of ending unsheltered homelessness by the decade and reducing homelessness overall by 50% by the end of the decade are aspirational, but also critical. So key to all this is not only coming together and working to find solutions, but also getting the resources for us to be able to expand the amount of housing and support for our unsheltered population. So we hope that with BAFA and the new resources available at the state and federal government, that we can make an impact in addressing homelessness in our region. But we also need a stable source of funding for housing and supportive services. And we look forward to working in partnership with you to advocate for these needed resources. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to present today on our work to address our shared housing and homelessness challenges. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. And really appreciate your comments and your leadership on this. It's been tremendous working with you and having someone in the position of the head of ABAG who is a real activist for this and very, I think, open to solutions and what it's going to take. And I would encourage anyone who has a question or a comment, you can use the raise hand feature under reactions on your bar. So I know we have a number of folks here who are involved in our housing work and very thoughtful about it. I was going to start, I'll raise the first question. You mentioned the word resistance, and we're seeing some resistance from some of the cities to the RHNA process, not just one or two, but a bunch. And it's not just happening in the Bay Area, because in Southern California, there was quite an increase in the requirements of how much housing that needs to be built there as well. So the city's attention has been gotten, I think it's fair to say. What are you seeing on this, and what can we do? What can we do to work with folks who are not amongst the convinced at this point? Is there a way to kind of get through this with them, or is it just kind of taking them to the woodshed? Like, what does it take?
Well, I see our RHNA once again as an opportunity for us to address, the significant shortage of homes that we have in the San Francisco Bay Area. And, we are now required to have to plan for significantly more housing than we have before. The state has said we have to plan for 441,000 units in the San Francisco Bay Area for the next eight years. And that means that we're going to have to rezone parts of our communities. We're going to have to, look at how we can incentivize the construction of housing, particularly affordable housing. And once again, I think it also presents an opportunity for those communities, I'll say Cupertino, for example, or Palo Alto, that have actively resisted building housing, to step up and to meet the regional need and to meet our statewide demand. And it's going to be tough. It's going to require that we're all going to have to make changes to how our communities are planned. But I think the support of the Bay Area Council for this effort, particularly our RHNA plan, and also projects and efforts to rezone communities as we move forward, is extremely important. As we know, as I certainly know as a local government official, it's oftentimes the loudest voices are the ones that have the most impact. And historically, the people that have been most outspoken about housing have not been the people that have been most directly impacted by the lack of housing. Millennials, the unhoused, working families, the people that are trying to protect what they have. And I think it's extremely important that we hear from business leaders and from people who have a different perspective about our housing solutions that we need. So, we are in the process right now of evaluating 28 different appeals from different cities and counties throughout the Bay Area. State law does really limit, what we can consider around these appeals. But at the end of the day, it's not going to make a substantial difference in what cities are going to have to do, which is we are going to have to look differently about how we grow. And we are going to have to upzone parts of our community. We're going to have to, look at how we can encourage more affordable housing in our communities. To that end, I think because of some of the resistance that we've seen historically, the state has increasingly been stepping in and try to streamline approvals and to take away the ability for local governments to oppose. And unless local governments step up, we're going to see even more efforts by the state government, and rightly so, to set laws around housing production and development. So it's going to be a busy next 2 years for many communities, but I think it's a unique opportunity, and I think it's going to really fundamentally change how our regions plan and how our region grows. And I think it's long overdue. We need to address our housing crisis, and it's going to require bold, transformative action by everyone.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mayor. I see Bill Diamond from the SETI Institute has his hand raised. Bill.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor, for all your comments. Just a quick question, and this is not an area in my wheelhouse of expertise by any means, but I'm certainly something I care about. We have a housing shortage, which is clear and obvious all over California, certainly in the Bay Area, certainly in Silicon Valley. We have an affordable housing shortage, but then there's also the issue of just mental health services. And when we start talking about the homeless, there's a population of homeless that are homeless for all kinds of economic and other reasons, not necessarily of their making. But then there is a group that needs mental health care that even if affordable housing were available, they might not be able to take advantage of it, or certainly not on their own. So I'm wondering what cities like Berkeley and city mayors and others facing this problem are doing to address this other part of the homelessness issue, which is the mental health care services that seem so desperately wanting all over the country, not least in California and in the Bay Area.
Well, thank you for that question. This has definitely been an area, of increasing focus, not only by myself, but I know many mayors in the Bay Area. We have seen an increase in people, who are in critical need of mental health treatment and services. Supportive housing is a really critical part of the solution, but also, providing the care that people need is also very, very important as well. And honestly, this is a problem decades in the making. Our mental health system is broken, here in California, and I would argue nationally. And this is going to require, I think, a very significant investment on the part of our state and federal government to provide the resources for us to expand mental health crisis response and also to provide services. But at the same time, we also have to look at some of the laws that are on the books as well, and looking at expanding conservatorship, similar to what San Francisco has done, looking at ways that we can not only provide the treatment, but the environment where people who are in crisis, who need mental health care, can get the support that they need. And it's going to take an effort on the part of all of us, not just the county governments, which many of whom run behavioral health care programs, the medical providers, state, federal, local government. But I think there's also an opportunity to work in partnership with the private sector on trying to find solutions as well. So this is a tough issue. And you're right. I mean, we can't solve the homeless crisis without also looking at how we address a variety of different challenges. Oftentimes people just don't need housing. They need mental health services. They need job training programs, access to employment. You cannot help somebody without providing that continued care that's needed for people to be able to, to be successful and be self-sufficient. And so this is a really critical area, and one that I imagine many of us are going to have to work more in the coming years, because it's a crisis that's decades in the making, honestly.
Thanks, Mayor. Maybe one last question from Mary Murphy, who's the chair, maybe two. Mary Murphy is the co-chair of our housing committee from Gibson Dunn, and one of the top real estate attorneys certainly in the state. And let me have Mary ask a question, if you would be so kind.
Well, thanks again, Mayor, for having us, for coming to speak with us today, and for the new task you've taken on. It's very important work, so we really appreciate it. And I think everything you just said sounds like the sort of thing we really do need to commit additional resources to help people, including expanded conservatorships. One question, though, that one of the big issues is the CEQA reform. I mean, the fact is, we know that there's been a lot of streamlining and really trying to take some projects and make them administrative or ministerial in their nature, so the CEQA doesn't attach. But how do you think we can really get to meaningful housing production if we don't have some sort of CEQA reform? And what would you see your role being in helping to try to promote that at the state?
I absolutely agree with you that we need CEQA reform. I won't talk about housing. I'll talk about fire prevention work. Talking to some of my colleagues who represent Sonoma County and Napa County, they have to go through an intensive environmental review process just to get approval to do fire fuel reduction projects, putting in fire breaks and other, other efforts to reduce trees and other hazardous fuels. And, that just stands in the way of, counties and other agencies being able to protect the health and safety of the residents. And I just think it's one example that, we really need to look at reforming the CEQA process. In addition, additional time does add significant cost to projects. We have projects in Berkeley that were approved 5 years ago that are really on lifeline, trying to find a way to move forward because of escalating construction costs and the shortage of labor. But also just the regulatory process adds enormous time and complexity and just drives up costs as well. So, I definitely support, looking at reforming the CEQA process, not eliminating CEQA, but reforming CEQA. And this is a position that ABAC and MTC have also taken, looking at ways that we can streamline the process, not just for housing projects, but also for, climate resiliency work and, other types of infrastructure projects, transit infrastructure, bicycle and pedestrian projects, things that we all agree are important for addressing our climate crisis and would actually result in reductions in VMT and reductions in greenhouse gases, but yet are often tied up with an extremely long environmental review process.
Thank you. Good question, Marion. Thanks, Mayor. And certainly the major transportation, big infrastructure projects may be the ones most victimized by CEQA and the way that it's applied. Keith Knopf, CEO of Raley's. If you have one quick question, we've got a couple of minutes left. Keith, are you still with us?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Jim. Mayor, thank you for the vision and the dedication. I'm wondering how your view of schools K through 12 fit in with this potential increase in density, and how do you bring that effort alongside this housing effort?
That's a really great question. As we are planning for more people in our region, we need to also plan for how we are, expanding our school facilities. And in Berkeley, we actually adopted a linkage fee that, a very modest linkage fee that's going towards, supporting schools, expanding facilities, schools and other school facilities to be able to support, the growing population in our region. I think we're estimated to grow by 4 million people over the next 30 years in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so, I think that raises a lot of questions. Where are they going to live? Do we have adequate transportation, water access, infrastructure? And I think schools are a very critical piece of that. We are seeing that in my community where, as we've seen I think about a roughly 15,000 person increase in population, over the last 10 years. And we are definitely seeing a strain and an impact on our school facilities and school resources. I argue the same goes for higher education as well. So I think this is an area that we're going to have to really, really focus on in partnership with our education partners. And, just as we need to focus on how we're going to expand infrastructure, transportation, and be prepared for the major changes that we're going to be seeing and we're starting to see in the region.
Thanks, Keith. And Mayor Arreguin, thank you very much for, I know you changed your schedule to be able to join us, and we appreciate that. And I would just say to all members, as Mayor Arreguin pointed out, we do have committees of homelessness and housing work that we do all the time that addresses these issues. And, we're going to have to confront these challenges in this next iteration. And I think we can be very confident and very pleased to have leadership of this magnitude, someone who's running a big city, who has a population that's not historically been in favor of big change in Berkeley and is leading the charge. It takes a lot of courage to do it. And I think we need to honor and reward Mayor Arreguin's leadership. So thank you very, very much for what you're doing. And, we have a major partner, and we're going to build a ferry terminal in Berkeley. I'll just throw that in for good measure. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's a pleasure.
Thanks. I'll throw it back to Kausik. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you, Mayor Arreguin, for joining us. I think we now have an opportunity to hear again from Jim on the New California Coalition and the California business climate. Where do we go from here? As you heard from Jim earlier, this is something that he's quite passionate about, as are many of us, and he's been spending quite a bit of his time with his usual tireless energy working on this. This is a statewide initiative that we hope will bring new energy, influence, and grassroots power to address some of our biggest challenges and to ensure that California remains the economic powerhouse that we know it is and should continue to be, that also welcomes business, talent, and investment. So Jim, please go ahead and share your update on the New California Coalition. I think we have some time for questions and comments over the next 25 minutes.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to use this opportunity to, hopefully lead into a conversation. And I was planning to show another deck about the New California Coalition, but I felt like the first deck was heady enough. So I think I'm just going to talk about it, maybe show you one slide. But let me give you a little bit of background, and I don't think this is an unfamiliar conversation to any of you. Whenever you're involved in an association like the Bay Area Council, which is largely made up of people who depend upon the economic climate and the business climate for their growth and their decisions that they make and their day-to-day existence, you get a lot of feedback and a lot of thoughts about what could be better, or frustrations about laws that get passed, difficulties of doing business here versus other places. This stuff is fairly common, and California is never going to be cheap, and it's never going to be easy. So over the years, we never really focused that much on this, as much as we focused on certain bills we thought were particularly difficult and that kind of thing. But in the last couple of years, things changed, and I started hearing thinking from a lot of you that was different than what I heard before, more serious, more concerned, feeling that business was just not really being heard at all anymore, and that things were happening at a pace in which the new rules in all of the different areas are just kind of outpacing our ability to manage our businesses. And then we started to see some stories emerge, especially from the San Francisco Business Times and reporter Mark Calvi, who started writing about companies leaving. Exodus, business exodus became kind of the talk. And I was the first one to say he was wrong, and say, Mark, this is anecdotal. Sure, companies leave, people leave. And so I was the original business climate denier. But as time went on, there really was no more denying, as the pace of companies making announcements, started to pick up. And then the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, it was sort of like a steroidal effect on what was happening. We saw a lot of major companies, obviously Oracle and obviously HP and Schwab and McKesson, but there's a litany of companies, many in the Bay Area, some not, making announcements about move of headquarters, move of entire company, not hiring any more people in the region, downsizing here, upsizing in other places. And outside of the announcements that get made in the kind of in the back room, you hear a lot of stories that don't get told in a press release, that are sort of the real truth of what's happening. And it's just certainly it's alarming. And as we talked about this more and more, I felt, we need to not just admire this particular problem, but we need to take it very, very seriously, because especially with the effect of the pandemic, what we saw is companies sort of do this retreat and become more strategic about this issue, really start thinking about, what are our future plans with remote work and with a lot of different variables and factors coming into play. Where is our company headed in the future, and how does it relate to our history in the Bay Area versus other opportunities, things our employees may want that we couldn't deliver before that now we have to, and so forth. And so what I saw was, we can't solve this problem in just the Bay Area. Not that some of the Bay Area cities aren't an issue unto themselves, and I think San Francisco is probably the poster child for that, having passed a whole number of really big taxes and sort of, putting a mark on business in a very, very negative way that, I think very, very few cities would do. And, but really it was a statewide issue. And most of the things that are coming down, they start at that state level and then they sort of filter on down. And, whether it's business taxes, whether it's new and difficult regulations, laws, things that are really hard to comply with, put companies at much greater risk, whether it's a lack of a plan to come out of the pandemic. What we saw was the state very, very slow to recover. We've continued to see that compared to other states, been a little bit better lately, but we're not doing what other states are doing. Whether it's homelessness crisis, which is being felt by employers in our major cities throughout the state, the housing issue, $1.5 million for a medium price home in Berkeley creates a real challenge for any employer in the city of Berkeley or anywhere nearby. And it's not limited clearly to Berkeley. So we feel like there are some things here that have to be addressed through different ways of seeing, Sacramento deal with issues. And Mary Murphy's question about CEQA is kind of a really, really important question. When we know we've got a problem that's getting in the way of us doing what we need to do, shouldn't we do something about it, even if the politics, stand in the way? So we started to look at this issue. And I was, one of the things I realized in trying to put together a statewide effort was, I'm A, running the Bay Area Council every day, and B, I'm a little above my head. So I convinced Clint Riley, one of our key members, to join as the leader of this from a task force. And after he turned me down a few times, I eventually was able to convince him to take this on, to actually come up with a strategy for how we could move the needle on state politics. And we've been working on that for several months. Obviously not an easy thing to do. It's been a long, this is, as the mayor said, the housing crisis that we face, it didn't happen in the last few years. It's a long time coming. I've been observing this for 30, 40 years. The change that's taking place in Sacramento, as certain groups have become very, very powerful, and business has really been in retreat, very, very afraid to kind of confront the issues, using their associations and so forth as a lever, but not kind of standing up directly and explaining directly to new elected officials with term limits and a lot of change. There's not a lot of education up in Sacramento about the real meaning of a lot of the policies that are coming out, which are the effect of organizations that are very one-sided in their thinking. They have the right to think what they want, but so do we. We're not doing a very good job of enacting that thinking. And so at the same time we started looking at the strategy, I felt that there's a lot of phenomenal organizations around the state that are all in their own foxholes, groups representing different regions, big chambers of commerce, sector groups. So maybe if we could, Justin, if you could throw up the slide. I started to reach out to sort of my peers and colleagues throughout the state. And what we did is we formed a group we're calling the New California Coalition. And this group, I think, it does the job of, if you just take a look at that for a minute, you can see we've held several meetings on a monthly basis in which I introduced the notion that, I asked the question, what's it like in the Inland Empire? What's it like in Orange County? What's it like in Los Angeles? What's it like in Sacramento? What's it like in the housing industry, in the hospital industry? And everybody pretty much comes back with the same view that, we're playing defense. We beat back bills, but some bills get through. There's nothing proactive. We found just in the last two, somebody should mute themselves because we hear you. We spent, the business community, there's called a broad business community, spent $450 million beating back several or pushing several initiatives. One was an initiative to undo AB 5, which put severe limitations on our gig economy companies, which has tremendous implications for those industries. And, that law shouldn't have been passed. There was enough opposition to it. And the normal theory is if you've got enough opposition to something, you shouldn't be able to do it. Well, they did it. And it just kind of shows the thinking and the influence that's going on. And so, $450 million spent on initiatives that doesn't have any long-term play. Once those initiatives are over, we don't have any information. We don't have a database. We don't have any proactive strategy and so forth. So this is all about aligning the groups in the state, all of whom are very good. I know most of these people personally over time, and it's a tremendous group of people, very influential organizations within their individual realms, but very little ultimate influence on what the shaping who represents us in Sacramento and how they represent us, and not really able to generate the kind of information and advocacy needed at the time that it's needed as the state goes through its legislative process and the governor considers issues and so forth. So we are not at the table. You know, you can take the slide down at this point. You know, we're not at the table, and they say if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so then what we've come up with is a strategy that's really a grassroots strategy. Yes, led by business, but really about organizing everyday voters in California who probably call themselves moderate. They're the 25% of voters who actually are registered as declined to state, and then large groups of both Democrat and Republican registered voters who will say, if you ask them in a poll, how do you define yourself? They'll say, I'm a moderate. And I think there's a lot of people in the state who they're frustrated. They don't have any place to turn. I think it's fair to say that with probably good intention, a lot of legislators are, you know, they're kind of out of touch with a lot of people in their constituencies. And I would just say the groups that have been active in Sacramento, to their credit, have done a really, really good job getting things organized and making sure that on every issue that's an important issue, they're being heard through the people whom that they effectively represent or say who they represent. And we just haven't done that. And it's time for that to change. So we've been out raising money. I want to thank our former chair, Mike Covarrubias, who made a very large donation to this. Keith Knopf from Raley's has made a donation to this. Rich Robbins, another board members, made a donation to this. We're in conversation, there's others. And this isn't just a Bay Area Council thing. It's not. It's meant to be a statewide organization. I felt we should lead it because A, nobody else was doing it. And B, the Bay Area is very much on the tip of the spear as far as the state's economy goes. We're actually 40% of the state's general fund comes out of the Bay Area, probably more gross product out of the Bay Area. So if the Bay Area doesn't do well, if these companies are leaving the Bay Area, if wealthy individuals are leaving the Bay Area because the tax rate is the highest in the country at 13.3%, then we're going to see deterioration ultimately in the state's performance. Now that's hard to juxtapose to the fact that while the state projected a $54 billion deficit, we ended up with a $85 billion surplus. So what kind of trouble could we be in if the state of California has a record surplus? So let me just say, and then I'll open it up. Who's the number one state? Which is the number one state in terms of poverty in the United States? That's right, it's California. A third of the homeless people in the country reside in California, but over half of the unsheltered homeless population, people who have nowhere to go at night, reside in California. 42% of families on welfare in America, 12% of the population in California, 42% of the people on family welfare in America reside in California. So, those are just a few of the statistics. I think this is an incredibly great state. This organization doesn't exist to tear it down. What we want to do is promote it. We want to sustain it. We want to build it. There's great people involved in this. The folks who run these regional associations these are bipartisan, nonpartisan groups that really only mean well, and they understand it's not just about making people in business wealthier. It's about entire populations, especially the most challenged populations in our society, being served. But we cannot serve people if the jobs are leaving the state, if those middle income jobs that offer people upward mobility are leaving. Yeah, we've got some really incredible jobs here in software engineering and computer science PhDs and those kind of things, people who make incredible salaries. But if there's nobody at the next level, if those jobs are leaving, and I think we could show that they are, and going to other states, which are more, much more aggressive about housing those kind of jobs, then I think in the future, we're going to see some real problems, and it's going to be hard to recover. So we created this coalition. I spent a fair amount of my time working on this. And, I was going to show you a deck. If you're interested, send me a note. I'm happy to share with you the more details about this. But rather than take you through that, I thought I'd just kind of give you the kind of high level take on it. So this exciting work, the people involved in it are very pleased to be doing this, but it's uphill. I'm not going to kid you. You know, this is nothing easy, and we're beginning to hire some staff and, you know, really put together a team to work on this from a management standpoint, from a fundraising standpoint. We've got SGR Consulting, Stephanie Remeliadis and Maggie Rothschild working with us to help us raise the funds for this. But you know, to organize, our goal is to organize 1 million Californians, and 100,000 businesses. There's about 1.2 million businesses in the state. We're talking about small business dispersed all over the state. The leading ethnic chambers of commerce, the California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, African American Chamber of Commerce, Asian American Pacific Islander Chamber, are all heavily involved through their leadership. I don't think there are any groups more excited about participating. So this isn't meant to be, you know, anything about going back to the past. It's really looking to the future about an economy for all that can be vibrant. And we don't like to see this notion of people leaving. I find it really discouraging. There's too many songs written about going to California. People are supposed to be coming to this place, not thinking about leaving it. And it's time to do something about this. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions and comments about this subject or anything that you heard about in the last hour and 20 minutes.
Hey, Jim, it's Kausik. The one thing I would add to what you said is the federal overlay. Lots of things get proposed in Washington, but I generally tend to pay attention when it comes from Ways and Means. And Richard Neal in Ways and Means proposed some, you know, significant things yesterday, right? And I think if you are a business in the state of California, or if you own a business in the state of California, or run a business in the state, you'll look at the cumulative impact of that plus everything that we've talked about in the state. And it's not just taxation, right? It's also the ease of doing business. You know, you mentioned CEQA. I think there was a whole host of things that I think we need to think about.
Yeah, I could show you, thank you, Kausik, and, you know, we could show you lots of articles, you know, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, you know, they love to write about this because they like to, you know, throw darts at California. And, you know, we don't like that. You know, we want to have them write the stories they ultimately write, which is California makes the surprising return. But, you know, with the weight of policy on us from the federal government, which in some ways could be good, but in other ways it's going to be pretty tough, as well as from the state and what happens locally and regionally. We have to be really on this now. We have to get better at this game of being more influential and being able to advocate for for an economy that's the 5th largest economy of the world. You know, we want to grow this economy and we want to keep pace. And we want to have an institute that's as part of this, that's like the Bay Area Council Economic Institute, where we can weigh in at a moment's notice on legislation and be able to bring proactive solutions. We don't want to be just against stuff. We want to be for it. We want to describe what a fair, balanced economy looks like and how we deliver that. So, you know, there will be, you know, standing up an organization like this isn't easy, but it's time. And, you know, we're not looking to displace any other groups. There's a lot of groups that are doing a lot of good work, but combining forces and actually bringing leadership to the table together, to work together, it offers an exciting possibility. And I think, you know, and then reaching down and touching real voters. We're going out in the field with polling. So we're going to be testing, you know, what is it that people really think? It's not what I think people think, it's what they think. And building then messaging around that can be sticky to people joining and participating in an effort like this. Not just for, this isn't meant to be a year's thing or 2 years. This is permanent. This has to get into place and it's going to take some time. So this isn't something that gets accomplished in a 30-second commercial or a quick soundbite. Unfortunately, I wish we could just turn the switch and go, can't you see what's going on? Well, they either can't or they don't want to. It's not convenient politically for that to be the case.
Jim, this is Jonathan Mace from Albertson Safeway. I really want to commend you for your leadership in Bay Area Council on this. That's a very impressive list of members that you shared just a few moments ago. I may have missed it, but I did not see the California Chamber there or California Business Roundtable. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity, or California Retailers Association. And I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for some others just to expand your resource, expand the list with additional resources.
Yeah, all three of those have been participating. In fact, they've all presented at the meetings that we've had. And so California Chamber is going through a leadership change. As you know, Jennifer Barrera is now the new CEO. So I sent her a letter and said, look forward to talking with you. And Rob Lapsley from the I think that's a really important thing is we have to be supportive of this and party to an organization that replaces the chamber in working on building and actually running for office who have a more balanced view of things, right? So that they can't just run for assembly because they won't win. They have to run for school board and city council and work their way up. So we have to manage a farm team. We're going to have to build that kind of a bench. That's not going to be easy to do, but we think through this organizing effort, we're going to encounter a lot of talent and passion, and we're going to invigorate that passion, so that's what organizing is about. And I give credit to our labor unions in the state. They've done a wonderful job at this. So if you check out the legislature today, a lot of the people who are now in the Assembly and the Senate were labor hall organizers, and now, they're there, and, they, I think, overrepresent that area because that's where they come from. So I don't know that we're going to completely level the playing field there, but I think we need to be at least be on a playing field.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Do other folks have comments or questions about this? Again, if you're interested in participating in this, you want to know more information, just feel free to get in touch. We'll put info out from time to time. This is a little bit separate from the role of the Bay Area Council. I think it's an addendum to do what we do. I want to make sure that nothing that we do on this side affects the work that we're doing in the Bay Area. We have to stay very, very Bay Area focused. And at times, the Bay Area doesn't necessarily agree with some of the strategies. There's things that are happening around the state and so forth. We're not always on the same side on every issue, but I think on the general question of how we do business in the state and how governance is provided, I think these groups that we put up are largely, very, very much in sync and very much share the common concern. And, with the recall happening tomorrow, then there's going to be a day after that. And I think that's at the next meeting of the coalition, which is coming up not this week, but next, we're going to have the head of GoBiz and the senior advisor, Dee Dee Myers, address the group. And I've talked to her offline, and, I'm suggesting that we can really work together with the administration on these issues. But in order to be effective, we've got to get our political game in order. We've got to bring our game to the state capitol, as we have to do in Washington. And, that's what we will plan to do. So I'm going to turn it back to Kausik to start adjourning the meeting. But I want to thank everybody, for everything, again, that you do for our organization, for our region. It's very, very. Oh, I see. I've got a question.
Of course.
Okay. So
really encouraged by what you're talking about, and kind of the depth and the need for building that kind of political bench to ultimately support the priorities. I guess one thing that I'm kind of curious to get your take on is that, do you think in some respects there is kind of this optics challenge that maybe there's this view that because we don't have our house in order in the Bay Area, whether it's necessarily tackling climate change, meeting our housing goals, dealing with the economic inequality, that it makes it more difficult when we as a region approach legislators in Sacramento, that we want to kind of, export our version of governments, when sometimes kind of the public narrative about our governance is that it hasn't yielded outcomes that we would necessarily like or are worth kind of highlighting. So I'm just curious to really get your take on, do we have an optics problem?
I think the issue that we have is, is the Bay Area an acceptable leader statewide, right, with the other organizations for this kind of an effort? And, my way of thinking about it, and it's, what's a wonderful point is, well, if not us, who, or if not now, when? And what I found is, I'm not suggesting that we be the titular head of this movement for any particular period of time. And this is going to be a true, well-governed, well-heeled organization with rotating leadership and so forth. So a true statewide group. And I think that, that should overcome, anybody's hesitancy that this is really the Bay Area trying to inflict its particular views and, unsolved challenges on any other part of the state. Most people view the Bay Area as very fortunate, compared to other parts of the state. We don't have a lot of the problems that others do. There's parts of the state where if you want water, it has to be bottled in because the wells are dry. There's just a lot of issues that folks are facing around the state that they see as being more problem. Everyone sees it through their own lens, but there are commonalities to it. And what folks are seeing, maybe especially people in small business, is we've just been heaping requirements and responsibilities out there that are really tough to meet. And, it's forcing people to the edge, especially given the pandemic. And so, I think what we have to do is come up with messaging as a result of all of the focus groups and polling that we're going to do that resounds with the group itself and then, with the greater public. When it comes to the legislative group, the kind of targets of this in Sacramento, they're going to be resistant to this because it's going to fly in the face of, what the demands of some of their major constituencies. And that's going to be where the rubber meets the road on this. But we don't intend to be silent about what we think is important. I think ultimately we'll succeed if we get the help from the business community to take this to a scale. California's a really big state. It's like a country. And, in order to impact it politically, it's going to take a lot of resources. So we're just kind of in the beginning of that, but we're encouraged by what we're hearing from people. Look forward to talking to you about it offline as well. So with that, let me turn back to Chair. We're just, I think, at the witching hour here. So thank you, everybody. And
thank you, Jim. Thanks to you and the team for exceptional leadership in extraordinary times. Thanks to all of you for attending and participating. For those attending the reception and the ball game, please enjoy it. I'm actually headed to my own ball game, which is my 11-year-old daughter's softball game. I'm the chauffeur. And we'll look forward to seeing you all in person very soon. Go Giants.
Thank you. Thanks, Kausik. Thanks, everybody, and be well.
Thanks, everyone.
I think so.